Did you know there's a song that's been sampled over 5,000 times by some huge artists who you definitely would have heard of? This is a very short story about the Amen break. Let's do it. You're listening to the Beat Motel podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalist. And as the world's most pointless snippet of disclaimer fades away, let's get into the Amen break. I made this video because until a few years ago, I didn't know about this. It's just a phrase I heard bandied around. Oh, that track's just the Amen break. I don't know what that was. So, if you don't know what the Amen break is, watch on. I'm going to make it very, very simple for you. If you do know what the Amen break is, watch on, because I need viewer figures. Right, so let's start at the very, very beginning. We need to look at what sampling is. So, what was sampling when it started? We know where it is now. You take a bit of music, turn it into anything the hell you want. But how did it actually start? Well, if you want to go super organic, the first sampler was the human mind and the human ear. Mozart famously went to the Vatican, and there was a piece of music that was only played at the Vatican. It was kind of illegal or something to actually write this music down, so the only way you could hear it was if you actually went into the Vatican. Then you could stand there going, oh, yeah, that's a banger. Yep, like that. Now, Mozart had a fairly decent brain, fairly decent ear. So when he went home to Salzburg, he wrote the music out. Here's this banger I heard, which is a bit like making a cassette tape of an album if you were born in the 80s or 90s like I was. Actually, I was born in the 70s, but let's not go into details. The next type of sampling was fairly similar as well. It was listening to a record and then copying bits of it with a live band. A really nice example of this is the Scatolites, a Jamaican band who would listen to the songs and TV themes coming out of America and the UK and other countries and just do ska versions of them, which led to some absolutely fantastic versions. Scatolites' version of the Guns N' Navarone is, as a teenager might say, chef's kiss. So you can see at the moment, we're not really talking about sampling in the modern sense. We're talking about taking something, adapting it, and creating something new. Because, yeah, that's what sampling is, but it has origins in very interesting places. Like adapting sheet music. People used to buy sheet music, move the dots around, do musical stuff, and adapt it. That's sampling, isn't it? And then, of course, there's the type of sampling I did before I had hardware samplers, and that was just simply being crap at copying other people's stuff, being in bad cover bands, that kind of fun malarkey. So let's look at some sampling methods that will be a bit closer to what you might recognise as a modern music fan. First of all, we had mechanical sampling. The Mellotron, 1963 this thing came out. You'll know the sound of it from Strawberry Fields Forever and just a load of other things. And it worked by having tape loops. So you'd record an instrument playing a note, and then when you pressed that key on the Mellotron, it would spin that bit of tape. These things were fantastically expensive and incredibly are still available to buy brand new now. I've seen one. But look at the mechanism inside. There's that bit that goes around there, and then it does this thing, and there's some sort of, I don't know what that is, a catapult with some sort of bollock on the bottom of it. Who can say? Next up, we have computer-ish sampling. So these were things like the Melodian, which was released in 1976. You will know some of the songs of this. If you know the Stevie Wonder album, why did he choose this as a name? The Secret Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants. It's just why? Why did he do that? He uses the digital Melodian on that. Again, not quite sampling. It's still kind of making an analogue of something, making a sort of a, hey, this thing sounds a bit like that, rather than actually saying this is that. And that all changed with the Fairlight CMI, which in itself has a fascinating story behind it. This thing cost the equivalent of, well, a decent house back in the day when it came out, and could only be afforded by the 4 richest kings of Europe, to quote The Simpsons. No, but it was fantastically expensive. I'm not joking about it costing as much as a house. I mean, like a nice house as well. £80,000 the second version was. That's a lot of money. But people like Kate Bush just grabbed hold of it. There she is, look, with a very large looking instruction manual. And she was such a fan of this thing, she she was the cover star for Keyboard magazine. There's something I just love about what is that really awkward pose that she's doing, but that look at her eyes just is so great. It's just sort of knowing, like, this thing's nuts and I'm going to create some music on it that's going to be used in a TV program called Stranger Things that will get teenagers into synth pop from the 80s. She's a visionary, an absolute visionary. After the CMI, we had proper, what you might think of as proper hardware sampling. The CMI, the Fairlight, was still using a bloody great big computer. This thing was massive. Whereas hardcore samplers like the Akai MPC 60, which was released in 1988, were very compact. I mean, relatively, they're still like the size of an old cash register. But they brought sampling to the masses in an almost affordable way, with a few drawbacks like having a sample time of, I think it was like a second, possibly 2 seconds. But one of the brilliant things about musicians, and especially musicians in the electronic genre, is they find ways of overcoming limitations. They're not bound by them. They use the limitation as a tool. So one way you could get much longer samples onto the Akai or the MPC was to record them twice as fast. So you'd play the record, or you play whatever sound coming from another sound source twice as fast as it needed to be, sample it onto the MPC, and then on the MPC play at half speed. This added some, we call them artifacts, it added some odd little noises and funny little things that actually started to really become synonymous with dance music and some hip-hop in the late 80s. So there's the Akai. So onto the Amen break, because too many minutes have passed without me saying Amen break. Amen break. For that, we have to thank the Winstons. Look at them there. Don't they look cool as shit? Amazing looking band. The B-side of a single released in 1969 by the Winstons was a song called Amen Brother. And I'm going to play you a little bit of it and see if you recognise it. I can't play the whole thing because of copyright restraints, but I'm going to push this as far as I can. So, did you recognise that sample? I think you probably did, didn't you? It was used lots of times, but I'm going to stick to some of the more notable ones. So, the first big notable one is I Desire by Salt-N-Pepa in 1986, and it sounds like this.
Yo, wait a minute, I want to talk to him.
Next up, huge one, N.W.A, straight out of Compton, 1988, Amen break. 1982, one of what I think is the biggest and most important use of the Amen break. LTG Bookham with Atlantis. Get your luggles round this. There are some uses by massive bands like the Prodigy in Minefields from 1997 where it's definitely using the Amen break, but it's doing something quite new with it, and you might struggle to actually recognise it in there. Have a listen. By the time 2005 came around, the Amen break had been used in absolutely thousands of tracks. Some of them were really pushing the envelope, really pushing the boundaries, like this track by Venetian Snares. So, who played the Amen break? Who was the drummer? It was Gregory C. Coleman, who died homeless in 2006, which... Also involved was Richard Spencer, who he didn't even know that it had been used. He didn't know. He claims he didn't know that the Amen break had been sampled so many times until 1996. Now, unfortunately, with regards to legal side of this and who owes money to who and all that, the statute of limitations on copyright infringement in America is only 3 years. If somebody nicks your music, the mechanical recording of it or samples it and makes money from it, you've only got 3 years to raise your hand and go, hey, no! So Richard Spencer got nothing. Well, he did eventually get some money, but it came through a GoFundMe. $24,000 might seem like a lot of money, but millions and millions of pounds have been made from sampling this band. It's the most sampled track in music. Arguably invented entire genres. Drum and bass, jungle, other genres, breakcore. It is the Amen break. We know that it's been sampled. It's been documented as having been sampled over 5,000 times, and I think that's probably just scratching the surface. So, it's now your turn. Go on, go sample the Amen break. Every other fucker has. So thanks for watching. That was a Beat Motel Bonus Bobbins episode. We wrote a bunch of episodes when we started this podcast that we never quite got around to filming because they're a bit scripted, but I don't want to just chuck them in the bin. Anyway, if you like this, go to the channel, subscribe, search for Beat Motel Podcast on any podcast platform and get involved, by which I mean use your ears and find out more. That light is bright. Fucking hell.